Welcome back to Canada's Blonde Moment.
To help me fight back, I need to be able to talk to you. So I'm trying to come to you as the Liberals have prorogued Parliament, as they've shuttered Parliament and tried to silence me and my constituents, trying to give you some information. There's a link in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's in the video description. I need you to click subscribe because it allows me to directly communicate with you and bypass all of the censorship issues that I'm about to break down for you. This is going to be a history of all of the Liberal censorship tools that they've put in place over the last 10 years to suppress different voices, to silence any criticism of their government, and to hold on to power. But I'm also going to explain to you why they're doing this and how it's about to get worse going into a federal election. So please click on that link. Please click subscribe. So I want to talk to you about the context for this video, and that is that Canada has a new Prime Minister designate. His name is Mark Carney. He was selected by, a little over 100,000 Canadians in a Liberal leadership review. He's never been elected in a general election. He's never held elected office. And the Canadian media is hardly vetting him. He's only answered a handful of questions. He's never really faced the public. And yet he is going to be, and probably tomorrow, he's going to have his hands on the ultimate levers of power in our country. And there's so many things that he needs to be vetted on that the mainstream media just isn't covering. So again, this is why I need you to click subscribe. Now, let's talk about the mainstream media and how they've suppressed independent journalism and dissenting voices, or any voice that wants to criticize the government. The former vice chair of the Canadian Radio Telecommunications Commission, his name's Peter Menzies. He wrote this excellent article in an independent outlet called The Hub a few weeks ago. And it says Pierre Poilievre, that's the leader of the Conservative Party, has the government-funded media spooked. And he goes through in great detail about how, and the byline, or the header in here is Canada's media are fighting hard to keep their government subsidies. And so he talks about how, because the Liberals have put in place subsidies, direct cash subsidies for certain mainstream media outlets, that it's essential, and they've coupled that with Bill C-18. It's essentially pushed other dissenting voices outside of any sort of public view. He also talks about how these subsidies, he sort of implies in the article that it incents these mainstream media outlets to do what? Cover the Liberal Party favorably, because they're providing them essentially the money that's keeping them afloat from day to day. So that in and of itself, when you have the government so heavily involved in the financing of mainstream media outlets, then those outlets are incented to only present one side of the argument. They're not incented to criticize the government. And that is actually a suppression of speech in and of itself, right? It's why, there's an accurate statement when people say, well, certain mainstream media, legacy media outlets in Canada have a left-wing bias. Of course they do. And again, if you haven't read this article, I encourage you to do so. You probably won't see it because it's suppressed by Liberal censorship bills. But this is why it's so important for you to subscribe directly to dissenting voices, to opposition voices. And that's why I'm asking you, going into an election, to click on the link that's in the comments or the video description. It's my newsletter. I will directly communicate with you on these types of issues so that you can hear it, in spite of prorogation, in spite of the mainstream media not covering these issues on a day-to-day basis, right? The other thing that, if we talk about the mainstream media that hasn't been largely covered, is the fact that Canada's public broadcaster, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which is funded by the government well over $1 billion. They give their executives major bonuses. A couple of years ago, in 2023, the CBC removed the term objectivity from its journalistic standards and practices. The perception and the criticism on this particular issue is that it's state-funded media, but by taking the term objectivity, or the desire to be objective, out of their practice, it actually, it's a signal that it's going to push Liberal narratives. And we see that. I see that when I do a scrum in the House of Commons. Whenever the CBC asks me a question, it's basically a Liberal talking point that's just, with an inflection at the end, right? They keep repeating the liberal narrative. They don't have in their terms the requirement to be objective. And that suppresses speech, right? Because I am part of the opposition of Canada, the official opposition in Canada. My job is to hold the government to account. And when you have the government so heavily funding legacy media and putting in place bills to suppress, that effectively oppress and suppress other independent journalism outlet, it suppresses speech in Canada writ large. So, and this is what I face as an opposition MP in our country. There's a few other things that I want to talk to you about too that also have showed suppression of speech. There's policies like the Canada Summer Job Attestation for government programs where they made certain organizations attest to certain principles in order to be eligible for funding. So there's been a lot of different programs like that that have been designed to suppress and eliminate voices that are contrary to the liberal narrative. Then you think about the impact of the Liberals' inaction on things like foreign interference. The Liberals, do you remember, like, again, another thing that's been memory hold, do you remember how the Liberals just dragged their feet on foreign interference for years and years and years? Again, by allowing foreign influences into our country, that actually, especially when it impacts foreign nationals that are now Canadian citizens who want to criticize other governments, that's a suppression of speech as well too. And that's been happening in Canada. Then you go through all of the other issues that happened, particularly during the pandemic, where, the government suppressed any sort of voice that happened that had questions about vaccine mandates. They called everything disinformation and misinformation as opposed to encouraging constructive public debate. You think about Justin Trudeau's comments about people who chose not to get vaccinated during the pandemic, saying that they hold unacceptable views. Again, this is the leader, the Liberal Party leader, the government of Canada, saying that there are certain types of views that are acceptable to them and certain that aren't. And again, that puts a chill on speech in Canada too. Now, here is the kicker. Why is this important? Peter Menzies, the former vice chair of the CRTC that wrote that article that I mentioned, he tweeted out something really profound today. And he said, the last CBC story, the Canadian Broadcasting story online that contains the word Brookfield, was February 26. Now, why is Brookfield important? Brookfield is the company that the incoming Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, chaired, who he still hasn't disclosed any of his financial assets. We don't know about a lot of the things that he did with the company, but there's been a lot of really negative stories about the company in the press lately. For example, the Financial Times, a very venerable financial media institution, published this story a few days ago. How much does Brookfield really make? And it's a long expose. Questioning Brookfield's accounting practices, their taxation practices. And of course, Mark Carney was the chair of the board during a lot of the activities that article undertakes. Yet you don't have the legacy media questioning him about this. It's only like on X and other platforms that you see people questioning him. Some of the international media do. There's a story in the Telegraph, a UK paper, that says Canada is about to discover Mark Carney is the man with the reverse Midas touch. The rock star former governor of the Bank of England has a trail of destruction behind his glossy jobs. Yet here in Canada, Parliament is prorogued. We can't ask questions about him. We can't litigate him in committees. We have 3 censorship bills that have been suppressing voices like mine. And we have direct media subsidies that incent legacy media articles not to question the governing Liberal Party. So again, you have this environment of censorship that prevents dissenting voices, that allow, with the hope of, the establishment wanting the Liberals to cling to power in spite of their decade of failure in affordability, the housing crisis, crime crisis, a broken immigration system. They want these guys to stay in power because that's where their bread is buttered, right? So again, this is my pitch to you guys. As we go into a federal election, I need to be able to directly communicate with you in a hurry and quickly and through these censorship bills. So if you click on the link that's in the comments or in the video description, it allows me to directly communicate with you. Now, folks, I want to reemphasize something that I don't think has gotten enough attention at all in Canada. How is it going to get worse? There are two things that have happened in the last several weeks that every Canadian needs to wake up to. First of all, you had a senior Liberal, and this was reported in Global News, saying that essentially making a call to outright ban the platform X. He said, the federal government, and this is from a Global News article, the federal government must make sure that they don't screw the thing up, that they make sure that we aren't denied our rightful place to make our own choices in the next election. So he's making an argument that, you know, one of the places where there is dissenting voices and holding government to account, like the platform X, other social media platforms do this too, YouTube, others. But he's making the case, the senior Liberal is making a case that X should just be banned outright. Okay. Now, keep in mind, this is the same party, again, that tried to ram through C-63, the online harms bill, so-called online harms bill, the draconian censorship bill that had thought crimes put in it. They tried to ram it through the House right before the House adjourned for Christmas. Now, the other thing that has not gotten nearly the attention that it deserves is that the current heritage minister just weeks ago talks about almost increasing 79% more on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation because it's a way to counter misinformation. And whenever a Liberal says misinformation, what do they mean? They mean voices that hold the government to account, that hold the party to account. Not only did she say that it should be increased by 79%, but she also said that Parliament shouldn't have a vote on this, that any funding to the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation should be put into sort of this a separate accounting process that doesn't really go through parliamentary scrutiny. That's insane, folks. That is something that, like, when you put all of this story together, and the reason why I did this long video today was to show you that these guys have an agenda, and it is to silence any voice, regardless of political stripe, on the left or on the right, that dare question them on their scandals, on their inflationary spending, on their censorship regime. They want to censor us. They want to hold on to power. And that's, you know, that's not what it means to be Canadian. And these guys lately, they're trying to wrap themselves in the flag, but they can't do that while they're opposed to the principles of free speech. So this is what's going to happen in the election. The Liberals want to call an election as soon as possible so that Mark Carney can't be scrutinized. He wants Canadians to think that everything that's happened in the last 10 years is Donald Trump's fault. That's what Mark Carney wants Canadians to think. And they are hoping and praying that if they go to an election quickly and that the mainstream media holds the line, that Canadians aren't going to realize that this guy is like the senior architect of some of the most disastrous policies that the Liberals instituted that bankrupted our country over the last 10 years. They don't want Mark Carney to be associated with the problems that he created that you're paying for now. So folks, as we head into a federal election, I beg you, I plead with you, they have done everything that they can to silence voices like me. And if you're watching this and you've been questioning the government, to silence voices like you. So how can you help me fight back? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to get this information out to you. I'm trying to show you exactly what the Liberals are doing. I've written an analysis on Mark Carney's speech. I've been in politics a long time. I understand how these things work, and I'm trying to get this information to you beyond what you're going to see in the CBC or on CTV. So if you click on the link that's in the comments, click subscribe, tell others to subscribe, share this video. It'll allow me to communicate with you during a federal election and beyond. Hopefully the Conservatives win a majority government and these disastrous bills and stuff can be repealed. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has committed to repealing these bills so that we can restore speech in Canada. But until that day happens, and I hope it happens, we have to fight. We have to fight the Liberals, and you can't fight unless you have the information to do it. So you have my commitment to communicate with you on things that I see, to come to you in venues like this. But, the Liberals will try and control platforms like this. They already have, right, with these bills. So please click on the link that's in the comments. It bypasses all middlemen. It allows you to directly communicate with you and get information out to you. And that's my commitment to you.
We are so glad you came. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye now. Bye. Bye-bye.
That was Canada's Blonde Moment, and I am out.